Interview. Today I have the pleasure of having ACCC Chairman Rod Sims on the line. Thank you very much and welcome to the program.
Thank you, Alex. Not at all.
So I thought I'd start at the beginning and just ask you to please tell us about the new draft report into the communications sector that you've released today and what some of the highlights are from the 29 recommendations.
Not surprisingly, there's a fair bit of focus on the NBN. Particularly, we're focused on the service standards that NBN sets itself to meet and whether they're adequate or not. Obviously, the NBN's gone through a phase where it was all about getting the bill done as fast as possible. Now that it's up and running and doing 30 to 40,000 connections a week, there's now issues around activations and missed appointments. So should we be doing more with service standards is one issue that's come up very large. Second, obviously, is the speed issues associated with the NBN, which is a mix of truth in advertising, because I think we've got some very unfortunate advertising practices out there, and there's obviously the question of CVC pricing. Thirdly, we're looking at a range of entry barriers. The aggregation market doesn't seem to be working well. Companies are having difficulty getting hold of dark fibre. Is the peering market working as well as it should? And so forth. And lastly, I guess looking ahead to 5G, what can that do? How do we make sure that market's as competitive as possible? Overall, though, Alex, I think the study says that the market's in pretty good shape, notwithstanding those two very large NBN issues, because you don't have problems with over-the-top connections. You don't have problems. You don't see really issues with bundling or cloud computing.
Very true.
A range of other things. The idea that you've got TPG coming as the fourth mobile player, Vodafone potentially the fifth NBN broadband provider. These are all good developments. So there's a lot of problems that countries overseas have that we don't have. And so there's a lot to be pleased about, but we need to address some of those issues I've just mentioned to have the market wanting as everyone in Australia wants it to work.
Absolutely. And is this the first communication study the ACCC has done, or was one done some years ago?
I think it's the first. I've been here 6 years. We certainly haven't done one before that, but I'm pretty sure it's the first one we've done, Alex.
Sure. And I mean, obviously, if you've been there for 6 years, and that's sort of during the modern NBN era, and before that, was the pre-NBN era. But I'll come back to that in a moment. But with the CVC costs, I mean, I've got a bit of a sort of comedic question. It's an ongoing problem. Can we truly rely on the ACCC to solve this, or do we need to set up an ACCC? I mean, are we still going to be talking about this problem in a year's time, or will it be solved once and for all?
Well, I think that's an interesting question, and I think we're having a discussion without having all the facts in front of us at the moment, Alex. So I think there's two events coming together this year and early next, which will be very important. Firstly, NBN are going to be putting out a new pricing product. We'll wait and see what that is, but they're having consultations with the access seekers now, and it's been much foreshadowed, so let's see what that does. Secondly, we need more truth in advertising. We're getting companies getting people onto the NBN at the lowest price, but then provisioning very little CVC, and so people are getting a poor service. We need companies to be telling consumers that there isn't just one NBN. You've got different speed plans you can sign up to, and what we're also saying is that you've got to be letting consumers know what the speeds you can expect in that evening peak. You can't just be selling 50 megabits per second. You've got to tell people what speeds you'll be getting in the evening peak. And also we'll have our broadband monitoring scheme out there, letting people know what speeds consumers are getting by provider, by plan, and that will help. That will put pressure on. So if we can get the truth in advertising, get the change CVC pricing, yes, get into next year, and then see where the NBN sits, I think we at the ACCC will be a lot better informed about what, if anything, we should do in relation to CVC pricing.
Mm-hmm.
Secondly, the government may then have all the information it needs to know whether it should be looking at adjusting some of the financial parameters. So we can't decide that now because there's too much we don't know.
Sure.
But I would hope in the first half of next year we'll be better placed to work out what to do with all these issues.
And will the broadband performance monitoring and reporting program be open to all ISPs and RSPs? I ask because in Canberra I'm connected to the old Transact network, which was an FTTN style network built up to 20 years ago, and it's working beautifully through iiNet, and I'm getting 70 megabits down and 30 megabits up. And yet a family friend is in another suburb across town in Canberra, and they're getting 0.35 megabits down and 0.25 megabits up, and no matter how much they complain to iiNet, it seems as though they have oversold the capacity in that area. I mean, and then that's not even an NBN connection; it's sort of the alternate NBN. So, will you be monitoring iiNet, for example, where they're selling NBN-style services, but not as part of the NBN network?
We'll certainly be monitoring iiNet. I can't now remember how many. I mean, in the monitoring program will be all of the major players and some of the second-tier players. I just can't remember off the top of my head how many of them will pick up, but it'll pick up a fair number of players.
Sure.
Alex? Yeah.
Well, I might ask my friend to sign up to your program, because I remember it was announced earlier, and anybody can be part of it, right?
Yes, we need more people to volunteer, because as yet we don't have enough volunteers in all the categories to make them all statistically significant. So we've got a lot of volunteers. I think last time I looked we were over 8,000, but we haven't yet got a statistically significant enough number in each of the categories we're hoping to monitor. So we still do need more volunteers. So yes, encourage people to do that.
And look, I know it's better late than never, but given that the NBN, and again, this is before your time because you've only been there for the past 6 years, but given the NBN was predicted to be a disaster long before construction even started, why wasn't a broadband performance monitoring and reporting program established, years ago at the very beginning of the NBN?
Look, that's a good question, Alex. I mean, we were pushing it for a few years. I guess, even though there are some schemes overseas, there's not a lot, and I think people just thought it was too radical an idea to have a regulator interfere in the market to make public what speeds people are getting. Now, when it was obvious that there was a problem, we can all have our own view on, but I think just jumping that hurdle of do we want to intervene in the market in this way, I think was part of the problem.
Well, I mean, the other part of the problem was that, the NBN was not supposed to have any speed issues at all. So I think you sort of alluded to that when you said when it sort of became a problem. But better late than never.
That's right. I think certainly when I walked through the door at the ACCC 6 years ago, and I walked straight into the NBN issues, as you said, it wasn't an issue. Well, I mean, there were some people calling it fairly early. That's fair.
Yeah. But I mean, but by the same token, probably 6 years ago, it was just only the beginning of the switch over to the coalition multi-technology mix, and so a lot of it was still fibre to the premises.
Oh, no, 6 years ago, it was still... it was still the fibre to the premises.
Yeah, so it was less of an issue then. It's sort of really accelerated under the current regime of the various mixes of technology, so... I can understand.
Well, partly that, and partly it's just a CVC pricing issue. You've still got limitations on fibre if they're not provisioning enough CVC.
Yeah. Well, anyway, you're doing the program now, and no doubt we'll get some results from that next year sometime when you're ready to release them. In your media release, you talk about enforcement action to address serious or systematic failures, and that's to do with advertising. But what kind of action are you talking about? I know you've taken people to court, but there are times it's well known that people talk about the ACCC seeming to be a bit toothless. So, what can you do to guarantee that you'll have some real bite in this area?
interesting, Alex, you say that. I mean, I think corporate Australia doesn't think we're toothless. We take them to court all the time. That comment's mainly made in relation to petrol pricing, where people think we're a petrol pricing regulator.
Yes,
but look, we'll have some cases certainly before the end of the year, Alex. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
And we'll follow up with further cases. So we're working on a three-part strategy. There's the broadband monitoring, which we've talked about. There's the accuracy, tell people what evening peak speeds you can expect. And then there's the selling plans and charging people for plans that you know you can't deliver. Now, we'll have enforcement action before the end of the year in that third category. In the second category, where I sell you 50 megabits per second, at 3 o'clock in the morning you can get 50 megabits per second, but in the peak evening you can only get 5 megabits per second, or as your friends are getting point whatever.
Crazy.
That we'll look at enforcement action on that next year if the advertising we're promoting doesn't get picked up. So no, we won't let this go. We've got a very strong enforcement track record, Alex. We've got Heinz, Medibank, Ford, Volkswagen, all sorts of companies in court. Late last year, we took Macquarie Bank, ANZ. We've had Google. We got Apple in court. So no issue with our bite, Alex. No issue at all.
Well, that's very true, and it's just one of those things where actions speak louder than words. And I was going to say that the thing I was just trying to remember what I was going to say. It's the computer or the technology industry is always the one that gets away with up to statements. Up to this speed or up to that speed. I mean, you can't get away with that in almost any other type of business. And so this is a conundrum for the ACCC.
Yeah, look, that's right. I mean, we've got. To be honest, we've got limited resources, so we've put our firepower into the broadband monitoring. We're looking at people who are selling speeds they know they can't deliver.
Yeah, that's bad.
And then the third category will be the one you've just mentioned. So fix up your advertising, or we will...
Well, we'll fix it for you.
we'll fix it for you. And I totally agree. I mean, that's why we take enforcement action.
Yeah.
This idea that, you have to... If you've got an industry problem, the best way to solve it is through taking people to court. That solves it very quickly.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the best way to solve it is to work together and not have it as an issue in the first place, but failing that, taking people to court. And with
That's right. Look, we've got industry on notice now that with this advertising guidance, you need to fix this. So you're on notice.
Yeah.
This is the period when we won't take you to court.
This is the grace
but obviously in the new year, all bets are off.
So just as we get towards the end of the interview, I always have three questions that I ask my interviewees. And one is to look into the crystal ball and, how do you think the competitive landscape in Australia will look in a decade? And alongside that, how do you think the NBN will be looking like in a decade?
I'm pretty confident on the competitive landscape, Alex. I mean, we're hoping to solve those NBN problems we've talked about. If we can get a better aggregation market, which I think we can, a better market for dark fibre peering, which we're working on, which I think we can, with Vodafone coming in, TPG coming in, as we talked about, I think, and with the new technology coming, particularly 5G, but who knows what's behind that. Once you get 5G in, people look for something else. We're doing pretty well. I mean, we don't have any strangling of over-the-top providers. We don't have any bundling issues, cloud computing. All those markets are working pretty well. So we want to make sure that the 5G market works well and make sure that no one's interfering with that to protect NBN or anything else.
Yeah, well,
so
as we know...
I'm pretty confident.
Yeah, well, I mean, Bill Morrow famously was asking, the government for protection for the NBN against 5G, and that would be highly anti-competitive.
And let me put it this way, Alex. I'm very confident that the NBN will be a success. But that's not to say it will recover its investment. That's not the definition of success.
Yeah.
The definition of success is, are people connected, getting good speeds, and it's helping to promote the economic development of Australia. Whether or not it gets a return on investment is actually irrelevant.
Well, the return on the investment is the happy people with fast broadband they can rely on, and the organisation delivering that for with stability for decades to come, and increasing
Correct.
speeds. Yeah, I mean Australia spends billions on submarines or fighter pilots or whatever it might be that we'd see no return on investment on, I mean that only delivers the safety of the Australian people, but there's no real return. Same goes with the NBN. At the moment, it's not delivering a return, and it's not delivering quality services either. So we've got the worst of both worlds. But thankfully you're there trying to make something change in that regard for the better.
But provided we define success as you just have, then we will achieve it.
Yeah.
Right? Provided we're not trying to protect it, we're not trying to force it to earn a return it can't earn. Now, I'm not saying it can't earn its return on investment.
Yeah.
I think it's too early to tell that. That's my point. I agree with Bill Morrow. It's too early to tell, but we will be able to tell, and let its return be what its return is.
Yeah.
It's of no public policy consequence, of none, right? Yeah. The issue is, the definition of success is the one you just described, and against that definition, if that's what we aim for, then we will achieve it.
Yeah, yeah. So look, my second final question is always to ask if you could please share some of the best advice you've ever received to help you get where you are today.
It's to just trying to think how to put this, Alex. And
Sure.
I didn't have warning of this.
Sorry,
I've
Rod.
seen the question. That's all right.
It was always from a mentor or a parent or a teacher. Something in life has sort of guided you all this time, and it's some great advice.
Yes, it's that don't work yourself to death. Just plan your time and do what you can. And make sure you get a good night's sleep. Make sure you do your exercise. Make sure you devote your time to the family, and then let your work take care of itself, because it will.
Look after the basics, and the basics will look after you.
That's right, because they will look after themselves.
Yeah.
Because if you run around trying to do everything, you'll run yourself into the ground.
That's it.
If you say, well, actually, I've only got this amount of time, you'll prioritise, and the things you don't do actually don't matter.
Yeah. Well, that's good advice. Well, my final question always is, what is your final message or messages, not just to IT Wire readers, but to all Australians?
I think be confident in the future. I think our telco market can work out well. Obviously, we've got problems in our energy market that we've got to solve, which is probably the biggest challenge the country's got, but we've got a great country and a great future, so be confident in it.
ACCC Chairman Rod Sims, thank you very much for your time. I wish you great success in exercising your bite, and success in keeping us, all of Australia on its competitive toes.
Thank you, Alex.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.